Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue watching 90 Day Fiancé, The Single Life. Let's watch.
After I was able to breathe and calm down, I know that we really need to talk deep, about this issue, but I don't know how this is going to end. Because I can be with a man that suggests these kind of things about me.
Baby, listen, like I already told you, you misunderstood me completely.
All right, so they're going to try again to work it out. She approached physically, which is good. She swallowed her pride or took the relationship to prioritized the relationship over her own upset feelings. And so she physically approached, and then he opens the conversation. I don't know how great it is, but it's, it's in the right direction. He's, really hammering on this point of, hey, you just didn't understand what I was saying. Now, she might think, well, that's a little bit of a BS statement because you were basically saying that. Now, maybe you didn't intend on taking it as far as I took it in my mind, but you did basically imply that I was being paid by these men to hang out with them. So, maybe a little acknowledgement that you said something. But, so they're both, they've cooled down a little bit. And we know from our research, John Gottman and colleagues here in Seattle, the University of Washington, my alma mater, where they studied couples and they would hook them up to a bunch of biomarkers. And what they found was that unbeknownst to outsiders and sometimes unbeknownst to the individuals, when couples are fighting, your physiological arousal, meaning your distress level, goes up a lot. So say from 1 to 10, with 1 being super chill and 10 being you're going to blow your top. Some people often, when they're in fights, particularly if you have relational traumas, particularly if we're not used to fighting, men are actually more prone to this, where their distress level physiologically, their heart rate, their blood pressure, there's certain brain differences when you're in that state, that you're like an 8 out of 10. Like I said, from the outside, it won't look like that. From the outside, the person's just, because we learn it's humiliating, according to our society, to show emotion. And so, particularly for men, and as you go up in distress, we have all these mechanisms in place to mask the fact that we are having feelings. 2, a lot of us, again, men more than women, if we're going to use the binary, are socialized, boys are socialized to not have feelings, to devalue their feelings, to be weak for being a woman, for being a girl. You don't want to be a girl now. Don't have feelings like a girl. You're not going to cry like a girl. That a lot of people, regardless of gender, will not even know what they're feeling in the moment. And if you ask them, how stressed are you? They're going to be like, oh, I'm fine. I'm just having a fight with, she's not listening to me right now. So what else am I supposed to do? Whereas the body doesn't lie, right? You have all these markers saying that you are having a massive fight or flight reaction. So it's common when we are fighting to need a break. And this is what we do in therapy, or we tell people to do this, is to know your emotional state, because there is nothing constructive that can come out of a fight when both or one person is an 8 or even above a 6, for example. And it's important to know that, one, which helps a lot of things. One is it cues you to take a break and to calm down, because you can't be constructive in that state, or it's very hard to be constructive in that, if not impossible. 2, it tells you, oh, I'm in a different state right now. Like, think about things that you're afraid of. Someone is claustrophobic, and when they're confined into space, they're in an elevator, or they're in the middle seat of a movie theater and it's packed, or they're in a crowded room. When you're in that state, you're in a different state. You're in a different mindset. You see things differently. And so that gives you the opportunity to know, oh, whatever interpretations I have right now are probably distorted. So it helps really to know your emotional state. And most people, in my experience, do not know. When I work with couples, even pretty differentiated, pretty mature couples, when I start working with them and I ask them their distress level, they're just like, what do you mean? Or, I don't know, I feel fine. And then over time, over perhaps years, months, they learn to really take note and go like, oh, one of the best things you can ever do as a human being for your life and for your relationships is to be very in tune with your body and very in tune with your emotional state, which most people are not, particularly Americans, Westerners. So it's important. So they took a break. They calmed down whether they knew it or not, and now they're reconvening to work it out. Let's see how they do.
Like, I would never insinuate or anything that you mentioned. I would never.
You say I got paid to see him. Like, I'm in love with you, you're a whore. That's what you say.
Okay, so she could be more constructive. She could say something like, well, I hear you. So that's even if you don't understand, or even if you don't believe someone, it's important to acknowledge that you heard. So best thing she could have said was something like, okay, I hear you that you say that you don't think that you meant that I was an escort. But what I heard was, it sounded kind of like you were saying that. So whether or not you said it or not, I kind of interpreted it that way. Maybe that's on me. And that really hurt my feelings. And that's why, and I'm sorry I slapped you. I should never put hands on. I should never be violent. That's not okay. I'm sorry I said F you earlier. But, you know, that's where I was coming from. So can you kind of understand where I was coming from in terms of how I interpreted it in the moment? You know, something like that. But what she's doing is more constructive than in the past. You can tell by her demeanor that she's handing it over to him. She's like, well, you know, you kind of said this, and it made me feel like this. So so sometimes it's not what we say, it's how we say it, right? I mean, it's an obvious thing. My mom used to say that all the time when I was a kid. And I'm guessing parents have been saying that for eternity, but so she's not being super constructive, but the demeanor is inviting. So let's see if he responds. So the best thing he could say is, well, yeah, I mean, I could see how you would have interpreted it that way, and I said the wrong thing. Or honestly, in the moment, I was hurt because you were saying this to me, and I got a little hostile with you with my tone, and maybe I did kind of imply that. I don't think of you that way, but I was just trying to strike back in that moment because of the way I felt. So let's see what he says.
You're insinuating something that actually is very wrong and off, because if you know me a little bit, you know that my heart is at the right place and I really care about you.
So, okay, he ended okay. My heart's in the right place. I really care about you. But he said this last episode as well. It was just like, well, the way you're interpreting it is wrong and off. There's I don't know, a kind of rigidity or sternness to it, that the tone he has or the words he's using. But she seems to be warming up to it. Let's see what happens.
I don't know. This is not enough. I need a good, ¿cómo se dice? Disculpa.
Disculpa?
Yes, I need disculpa. I'm sorry from you.
Her tone of voice, she's kind of smiling. I think she's like, you know, I can't really, so this is good that, and I work with the couples in this situation where sometimes you'll find yourself like, I need this or that. Sometimes it's an apology. And it's important to just tell the person instead of like hoping that they do it. You know, a passive way of saying this is, well, you just never apologize. A more direct, mature, differentiated way is, well, I guess I kind of need an apology to move forward.
Of course, I want to hear and apologize. Not because I'm going to forgive him, but because I want to hear it. I need to hear it. For me, my family, my daughter, and all the woman that I stand for.
I said, again,
no, not enough. So I need a good one.
So again, her tone of voice is welcoming and soft, saying essentially like, all you got to do is say you're sorry, and then we're going to move forward. It's hard for him, I think, to apologize, generally speaking. I mean, I don't think he's ever really apologized for anything that he's ever done. Now, we haven't seen a lot of circumstances with him, but so there's that. And it's consistent with his personality. And really, a lot of people on the show have a hard time apologizing, so that it's not very, and really a lot of people have a hard time apologizing because a lot of people have been relationally traumatized to the point where they feel like to apologize to be weak or to invite ridicule or rejection is probably the core of it. But he also, in order to apologize effectively, has to acknowledge that he did something wrong, and he has not done that. He is 100% sure she is, in terms verbally, what he's communicated is she's wrong, she distorted things, I did nothing wrong. So how could he apologize with that mindset?
But will you say sorry, though?
No.
Demanding. Well, put my pride aside to come over there. Sorry. My heart is at the right place. I have the right intentions, and I would never, ever intentionally hurt you.
Okay, in the right direction for sure. I mean, on the scale of things on the show, it's certainly constructive. She's receptive. She's, you know, hugging him back. Her demeanor prior to this moment was also welcoming. You would hope there'd be a little bit more self-awareness. You know, some couples can manage with this level of differentiation and health as long as they don't have major fights or they don't take it personally. So, I don't know. On one hand, the prognosis is good because they managed it relatively well, but it could also be bad because they both lacked the ability to really say, I should not have hit you. That was wrong. Or, yeah, I was upset in the moment because you were poking at me and I was hostile with you. You're right. You know, just, it wouldn't be that hard to say that, right?
Okay.
Never treat me like that again. Okay.
All right, baby. Let's go get ready for snorkeling, all right?
Okay.
There's a seeming power play at play, if you will. He, you know, she's like, hits him playfully, says, don't you ever treat me like that again. There's a slight power struggle between the two of them, and he doesn't respond. You know, he's caring, and there's a lot of communication through that tight hug. But verbally, you know, there's a power struggle there, because he could have said, yeah, you're right, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. He said sorry. She also could, you know, there just seems to be a competition there that could blossom into something more problematic. But I don't know. I mean, on the scale of things on the show, I think that this fight worked out relatively well. I mean, just think of Angela and Michael, or who else can we think of? Colt and Larissa, right? So on the scale of things, like definitely on the side of things where things could be okay between the two of them if they choose to stick with it.
We make mistakes, we do dumb shit. Hey, like, I really fucked up here. But the fact that you can do that is very powerful. But I think also that's also what I like about her, you know, because I like, I say this also jokingly, like, if you want to hit me, do it in the bedroom. Like, I like that fire there. And, yeah.
Okay, so later on, they're being interviewed, and looks like things have been working out for them. And in that moment, he could say, you know, we effed up. That's interesting. Instead of saying, I made a mistake, and I kind of think like you might have made a mistake too, it's we effed up. You know, it's definitely in the right direction, right? There's an implication there that he's admitting that he made a mistake. I don't know. But some people on the show, they'll say stuff like that, you know, like Ed, and not really embody what they did wrong. You know, I sometimes talk about the 10 elements of a research has demonstrated of an effective apology. And what do we mean by effective? We mean, one, that you communicate to the other person effectively so they're like, oh, okay, they get what they did. But also that you really understand what you did so that you can avoid it in the future. You know, that's what apologizing is for, is to figure out, you know, when you're teaching your 5-year-old, apologize to your sister for, you know, it's not just a ceremony, it's not a ritual. It's because you want your 5-year-old to understand like what you did. Like stop and think about what you did and communicate that to the other person and ask for forgiveness, because it'll alert you to the fact that you did something wrong and you want to avoid this in the future. And so reflect on it, you know. And so if you're a parent, really taking the time to, don't just have them, I'm sorry, you know, really say, okay, do you understand what you did? I know you're not a bad person, 5-year-old, but do you understand what you did? You know, do you understand that when you did this, this, and this, it impacted this other person in a negative way? You didn't mean to do it. It wasn't like you woke up this morning saying you wanted to be a jerk face. It's not, you're always, as kid, when you're really anyone, you want to communicate, partners included, that your criticism does not criticize who they are. You're just criticizing a behavior they did, and in all likelihood, the behavior was not intended to produce the result that it did. You always want to have that belief, even if it's not always true with kids, because sometimes kids just they want to push their sister down the stairs and they want to hurt their sister, but you want to avoid having that narrative and injecting that into the kids. But anyway, so it's all part of that system of like, do I understand what I did? Do I understand how I impacted someone else? And do I have a plan for rectifying that in the future? Do I understand how I got to that point? Does Jesse understand that she was hurting his feelings earlier than that moment? Does he understand how that affected him? Does he understand he's vulnerable in that way? Does he understand that that produced a slightly hostile statement that she interpreted, bigger than it was? Does he understand that? Or is it just like, well, we make mistakes and we really know, she's the one that makes most mistakes. We'll move forward. So, but honestly, the second example I gave, a lot of people are like that, and a lot of good couples that stay together a long time and are satisfied with their relationship are kind of like that. So I guess I'm just asking for perfection. I don't know.
In the moment, it felt really difficult, but Jesse and I shared this beautiful, strong connection so we could get through this. And now we just hope that there's nothing else to ruin our last days together.
All right. Well, that is it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.